Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Mayoral Forum for Perry, Oklahoma, I'd like to introduce you all to the candidates for mayor. They are to my left, Mr. Gordon Johnson, and to my right, Mr. Marvin Dement. And we are very happy to have you here in person and through the Perry Information Network. With the help of Mr. Tyson Davis, Director of Telecommunications, and our card keeper, Ms. Dixie Johnson. I'd like to briefly explain to you the format of the forum to help you see what is going on. In regard to this particular matter, each candidate will be given the opportunity to make an opening statement. The opening statement is primarily intended for the candidate to introduce themselves to you all. Mr. Dement will give an opening statement, followed by Mr. Johnson, as determined just prior to the forum by a coin toss conducted by myself. I will ask a series of questions to both candidates. Each question will be answered in turn by both the candidates with the response time of approximately 3 minutes. The first question will initially go to Mr. Dement, and the second question will initially go to Mr. Johnson, and so on till they have been presented. The official timekeeper, Ms. Dixie Johnson, will display cards to let everyone know when their time is coming to an end. Once all the questions have been presented, or the time allowed for questions has expired, each candidate will have the opportunity to present a closing statement. The closing statements will start with Mr. Johnson, followed by Mr. Dement, and we will then close the proceedings. That being the case, without further ado, I'll turn to Mr. Marvin Dement. And Mr. Dement, would you please proceed with your opening?
Thank you. As Judge Allen said, I am Marvin Dement, and before I get into much of an opening statement, I wanted to thank Judge Allen for giving up his part of his evening to come accommodate us. I want to thank Tyson for putting this together. The folks that are here tonight certainly want to thank, because we're competing with the NCAA basketball tournament, the NCAA wrestling tournament, the Thunder are playing right now, and the Hector Tovar baseball tournament's going on, and the weather's beautiful if there was nothing else going on. So I really appreciate y'all giving up your time, and the folks at home as well. But most important, I wanted to thank Gordon before we go any further. Our local elections are a lot tougher than statewide elections. To keep it on from turning into a personal issue, and from the time I got in this has never been. I've never looked at it as Gordon being my opponent. I've kind of run against some of the status quo. I consider Gordon to be my friend before this started. I consider him to be my friend tonight, and I certainly hope he considers me to be his friend on April the 2nd after this election's over. And I really appreciate that he hasn't made it personal, and I've done everything I can to keep it from getting there. So for that, thanks. Now I'll kind of get back into that introduction. I am Marvin Dement. I work at the First Bank and Trust, been there for 17 years. I've been involved in a number of things in the community for the entire 17 years I've been here. I had a short stint filling an unexpired term on the City Council a couple of years ago. I'm presently on the Planning Commission. I've served on the Chamber of Commerce Board. I was an officer there. Main Street of Perry, I actually served as the president, I believe 2 terms there. Leadership in Noble County, I was Class 3 and then served as the chair of the entire program. I've been involved with Relay for Life since it came to Perry back, I believe that was 16 years ago. I believe this is our 16th year. I'm a loyal Rotarian. I very, very rarely miss, and that's only when I'm out of town. But I really did want to point out the reason I got into this election to start with, or chose to get in this. I got a little frustrated the short time I was on the council with some of the way the council conducted business, the way that I I just didn't think that we were completely listening to the citizens, and we didn't always act with full knowledge before we acted. We didn't all have good full knowledge. I want to see that that's changed going forward, and hopefully turn the council back to being the citizens of Perry's council.
Thank you, Mr. Dement. Mr. Johnson?
I want to thank Marvin for his statement, and I want to talk to the audience here and say thank you for your time also. Thank you to the people watching at home and on the internet. I really appreciate your attention. Marvin and I are on the same page when it comes to keeping this a political battle, not a personal battle. Thank you, Marvin. As a candidate, I chose to be a candidate while serving on the council these last almost 7 years because I was asked by a friend, would you be interested? And I appreciate that request, and the time I've spent on council has been a joy. It's been fun. It's been enlightening. I've learned a lot about Perry and the citizens of Perry, the needs of Perry, the needs of the local people are so important in any forum or campaign. I feel like belonging to local organizations is important. I belong to national and local organizations also. I'm an elder in my church, First Christian. I am a new member of the Lions International. I have worked with the school board in doing sidewalk projects for them. I walk the streets of this town, and I'm impressed with the people. Marvin and I disagree somewhat about issues, and that's what makes this a race. I feel like the issues are more intrinsic and more important than just some communication. If you're on the council and you don't understand, then you should ask. If you're on the council and your constituents are calling you and they don't understand, you should ask. There's time at each question on the council, each meeting, to ask those questions and get the answers you want. I've had questions as far back as a year ago, and Lynn Norman and I have been doing those questions before the city and before the council, and we've received answers. It's just once you receive an answer, are you going to believe it? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for those opening statements. It's well thought out, and I appreciate it very much. At this time, then, we'll begin with the first question. And the first question will initially go to Mr. Dement in that regard. Perry operates under a charter form of government where the city manager is responsible for day-to-day operations. In your opinion, Mr. Dement, what role does the mayor play in the management of the city?
I'm going to start by telling you that I've been hoarse all day, so I may give some of my time back on some of these. If I can do this in less than 3 minutes and still have a voice when I get finished, I'm going to do it. The mayor is the public face of the city of Perry, and we could get into the specifics of what the exact role of the mayor is. The easier version of that, I can just refer you to the charter. It's published on the city's website. It tells the exact job function of the mayor as well as the city manager. And as Judge Allen said, the city manager is the CEO. And actually the charter forbids the city council for interfering in and micromanaging the decisions of the city manager. I personally think that's a great idea. I have always been opposed to micromanagement. I've experienced it. I don't like it. I don't want to be the city manager. I'm not qualified to be the city manager. I didn't apply for that job, and I'm certainly not qualified to come in and tell a city manager exactly how to do their job. But what I do think that as the mayor you can do is influence the tone of the city council, which in turn affects the culture of how the entire city government works. And what I said, I think there's been a bit of a communication breakdown at times, not on everything. And again, I don't want to come off sounding like I'm negative on everything, because everything's not broke. I just think we need to do some tweaking. I believe if we can get the city focused on what our constituents think is important, and at times I think the city council has lost focus on its citizens and what they really want. I just think we need to start listening to them, and I think it's the mayor's job to make sure that the city council and the city administration stays on point as far as what the citizens want us to work on. And I'll defer my time.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, in your opinion, what role does the mayor play in the management of the city of Perry?
I say hooray to Marvin on his statement, but I want to add to that, the black and white legalese of the description are important. But in my opinion, the most important facet a mayor has is indeed he is the face of the city. Indeed, the courts recognize him as the head of the city. The governor must recognize him for purposes of military issues, the courts for civil issues. But more importantly, he's a councilman also and has the same duties as a councilman and the same rights as a councilman. But more importantly than that to me is he is the one that's not representing a ward, so to speak. He is the one person in this city that represents every individual, no matter who they are, where they live, or what their job is, or whether they're retired or whether they're invalid. He represents everyone. And that's his most important function, is be the ear for those he represents. Judge.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, even though Perry is a small city, it still faces big issues. In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue facing the city of Perry, and what remedy would you propose?
Thank you, Judge. And to you in the audience and you watching at home, the issue is that we have a deplorable infrastructure. As I pointed out earlier today in another meeting, the American Association of Civil Engineers rates Oklahoma with a D grade for its infrastructure. Sanitary sewer and water are at a D minus. So what are we going to do about that? Our budget will not allow for us to go out and fix it all. Our budget will not allow for us to go out and fix every street and repave every street. What are we going to do? One, we can do some work out of our budget, one street at a time, or one line of water at a time for 300 feet, or from manhole to manhole on a sewer line. We can do that and progress across town repairing. Or we can impose, as we have in the past, a 1 cent temporary tax. The one we have now paying off the debt of the last paving job of 2008 and subsequent to that is in the black now. Just this quarter, that is paid off and we are in the black on that 1 cent sales tax. That money can be applied now to street repair and street patching. The other option, which most of us of late have not liked much, is we can sell bonds or issue bonds to be paid for from our taxes. And every one of those, there has to be collateral. And in cities who sell electricity, that collateral is electricity. But I promise you right now, the city is in the black. It can pay its debts now, and it can pay its debts in the future, and there's no fear of your electric rates going up in my lifetime, I hope. But I know within the next 2, 3, 4 years, there will be no need for an electric rate increase.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Dement, in your opinion, what is the most pressing issue facing the city, and what remedy would you propose, sir?
And I've actually got a couple of things that come to mind there. One of them is at times, like I've said, the city's lost focus on what the real issue is and what's important to the people, and that's core services. Water, sewer, electricity, streets, police, fire. Those are the core services. Those are the services that our citizens can't reasonably provide for themselves. I think Gordon and I are, and we're probably going to repeat this thing more than once, infrastructure is an absolute important thing that the city of Perry needs to be focused on right now. I've been hearing for a while that our sewer system is deteriorated and needs a great deal of repair, replacement. I don't know what you do on that. I'm not an engineer. I don't have all the specifics on that. If it's going to be a major fix, and if I'm in one of the areas that has sewer backing up, it needs to be fixed yesterday, and it needs to be fixed right. But I'm assuming that's a major project to fix that. Again, I don't have the numbers. I'm not an engineer. I don't know what all it would take. Gordon alluded to the fact that one of the options we could do is issue bonds. I'll point out that the city right now already has over $11 million in bonds issued out there. If you take short-term debt, you're probably approaching $12 million that the city owes. Is that a lot or a little? I'll let everyone else make that decision. One thing I can tell you is the city right now has $6.9 million in debt service that's due from 2014 through 2018. That sounds like a lot to me. That's something that going to have to be accounted with the budget talks that come up in May. It's something that any future debt that we issue is going to have to account for the fact that $6.9 million is going to have to be paid, and it's fairly equal over that 5-year period. But to me, that sounds like a lot of money. We pledged our utilities and hotel motel tax on a $2 million bond that was, or $2,065,000 bond that was issued last fall. The hotel tax will pay that. I'm not going to argue that. Right now, things are good. When things are good, which they are right now, that's when we should be thinking about getting out of debt instead of taking on additional debt.
Thank you, Mr. Dement. And sir, with the expansion of both the commercial and industrial parks, Perry's well positioned for growth into the future. And how will you foster economic development to help Perry continue to grow and improve, sir?
With all due respect to the judge and his question, I kind of want to go back and rephrase that a little bit, or not rephrase it, but go through it. You started with the expansion of the commercial industrial parks. Perry's well positioned for future growth. I don't think the commercial industrial parks do position us for future growth. They position us to be regionally competitive for businesses that want to relocate on the I-35 corridor between Oklahoma City and Wichita. That makes us regionally competitive. That is one small slice of the economic development pie. You can also look at health. Infrastructure falls under economic development. Anything that promotes good, strong economic growth in your community, as well as increasing the standard of living. I personally think if we want to, well, let me go back and go with what the actual question is, which is, what will I do to foster economic growth to help Perry to continue to grow? Now, that indicates that we already have growth. That would imply that growth is going on. I know growth can be measured a number of ways. I personally prefer to look at population. Our population's been stagnant for decades at a minimum. What we need to do is figure out how to jumpstart growth. And I think to do that, it gets back to what I keep saying. We need to listen to the citizens, give them back their voice, and start reinvesting in what they're interested in. Right now, I believe that's infrastructure. I think I've talked to a lot of people in the last few weeks. One of the issues that keeps getting repeated is the permitting process and the inspections that go along with that. I understand that if your hot water heater goes out, you have to go get a permit to replace it and have your work inspected and up to code. I'm all for things being up to code. We have a lot of people in Perry who can't afford to hire a plumber in some cases and upgrade their house. We need to make the city a lot more user-friendly. And I think once we do that, our citizens will recruit the growth for us. And we can't very well ask people and recruit people to move to our community until we've recruited the people who already live here to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, how will you foster economic development to help Perry continue to grow and improve, sir?
Our economic development is based on a need, and the need is housing. The need is jobs. The need is, my son here lives in Houston. I'd rather he lived here. But his career is in Houston. That's his choice. The job he has and the company he manages for do not offer those services in Oklahoma, to my estimation. So I would rather he seek out his career where it will pay him the best so he can secure a living for his family. But I also know that many of you want your children here, and your children want to stay here. The only way we can do that is to attract new positions, new jobs, or growth for our current job providers. To do that, we've got to develop corridors within this city, so say along Fur Avenue, that will foster commercial development and economic growth in that way, to rid ourselves of some of the blight we have along our thoroughfares, to where people coming through our city see our city, not vacant houses or buildings, boarded up windows. It's our job as a city. I don't know all the answers. I don't know all the questions. But I do know that every citizen in this community has an opinion and has an idea and can help foster growth. Just like Marvin said, the citizens can foster the growth by their talking with their relatives and friends out of state. With what we have now, we are growing. It may not be the businesses of 20 years from now, but at least we're growing. We are actively seeking employers to come here. We are on what used to be the Mississippi River to Tennessee is I-35 for us. We are poised in a great location. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, as the mayor, you'll be expected to attend public functions and meetings throughout the state, and sometimes perhaps the nation, as the official representative of the city of Perry. If elected, will you be able to carry out these duties?
Yes, indeed. I would love to. I've enjoyed the times I've got to travel as the interim mayor, or acting mayor, to the different functions around the state, and indeed right around our city. It's been a blessing to meet some of those people in the power company that I didn't know before, and the power providers, and the people who are Main Street Award winners, and I enjoy that. I'm well versed in how to travel, and I would think it'd be an honor for anyone to be able to represent the city of Perry at any function.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Dement. If elected, will you be able to attend public functions and meetings to carry out the duties?
When I knew this question was going to be asked, I thought this is a non-question. We can both probably just say yes and be done with it. But I don't know any other way to say this without doing a little ad for my employer, which is the First Bank and Trust. Before I publicly announced that I was going to pursue this candidacy, I sat down with my boss, Gwen Easter, and I gave her a little bit of time to think about, the fact that I was going to be doing this and all the baggage that goes with it. And I made sure that before I did that, she was on board. One of the things, and there's several of my coworkers that are here today that kind of are helping prove that we aren't allowed to do things like this at the First Bank and Trust. We're encouraged to do it. And I'm kind of proud of that. And you see us at a lot of events everywhere you go in town, and have for the 17 years I've been here. But before I was going to do this, I wanted to make sure that I was going to be allowed to take the time. And as I said when I sat down, I said, I don't know how much time being mayor will take. I know there's going to be time during the day, times full days, whatever the case may be. I need to make sure you're on board with that. And I also wanted to confirm that there will be times when, as the mayor, I may have to make a decision that's not necessarily in the best interest of the First Bank and Trust. But if I believe it's in the best interest of the citizens of Perry, I'd be able to make that decision and not be chastised at work. I was assured that just like any other citizen, that I would probably get a phone call from someone expressing their views. But when it came time to make a decision on behalf of the citizens of Perry, my judgment was going to be trusted. If I didn't think that I would be fully supported in travel and my decisions, I wouldn't be here tonight. And yes, I will be able to fulfill those duties.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dement, with budget season quickly approaching, what are your thoughts on annual price increases for city services?
I didn't know we had annual price increases. I hope we don't. If we do, in a short version would be I'm opposed to them. As we've already kind of talked, our utilities are higher than most anyone else. They're probably higher than any of our citizens want them to be. I mentioned the permitting process. There are a lot of people who are upset with the fact that they have to get a permit to change the faucet in their kitchen sink. I think, that being said, I'm not in favor of increasing any revenues at this point. Can I say that it won't happen in the future? No, because I haven't been subject to the budgeting process, and I do want to go into the budgeting process just a little bit, what my thoughts are, since that's kind of what we're talking about. I've talked to several city employee groups. I want every single city employee involved in the budgeting process, and I'm not talking about bringing every single city employee into the council chambers and letting them express their view to the council that I need this in the next year. What I'm saying is the department heads need to sit down with each of their employees and get not so much a wish list, but a need list. And this is something I know Gordon has already mentioned in the past, maybe not yet tonight, he probably will, is he's in favor of a budgeted infrastructure maintenance program. I'm going to go a step further, and I suspect he'll agree with me on this. I'd like to have a budgeted maintenance program for all of the city departments, whether it be to take care of the fire trucks, which are very expensive equipment. I'd also like to get a program. We have the police that have cars that need to be rotated out on a regular basis. Figure out how many cars we need, what the life expectancy is, try to rotate those cars out on a regular basis so that we don't have spikes from one year to another, up or down. Let's get a regular program. The fire department, same way. We have firemen right now wearing 15-year-old bunker gear that the manufacturer says throw away at 10 years. We can't be doing that. We've got to replace that, get into a program where that bunker gear is replaced when its life expectancy expires, and move forward so that we don't have spikes in our expenses, either up or down.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Johnson, what are your thoughts on annual price increases for city services?
I'm on Marvin's side of that. We're not in favor of that, and I don't know of any councilman currently that is in favor of increases in any of our utility services. It's a sad day when that has to happen. But we are interested in the budget process, just as he has stated, that the supervisors of the departments include their staff in working out their budget. That's happening. The CFO is putting together the dollars that can be budgeted, and then the department heads are going to go through and match their needs with our budget, and then we will determine what those priorities will be as a council from the input of the employees. He is exactly right. The fire department has equipment that is very specialized. Some of their pumper trucks have not had their pumps maintained ever, because that's something the fireman can't do himself. It takes a mechanic taught and trained in doing that. Just the keeping that apparatus going needs to be a scheduled, budgeted process, just like you would if you own a fleet of any vehicles, trucks, cars, ambulances, airplanes, whatever it is. You've got to budget, you've got to maintain that equipment, so those departments, whatever they are and whatever equipment they use, need to have a schedule of maintenance for those complicated issues within that equipment that our firemen, our policemen, our local mechanics cannot take care of. And some of that is very expensive, but it's got to be done. And being a former crash rescue chief for the National Guard in Norman for the 145th Aviation Company, I know about fire equipment. I know how important it is. I know the equipment we wore when I was in there in 1970 and what they have to have today is different, because there are hotter fires out there today. There's nothing hotter than JP4, but I guarantee you, any fireman going into a house or a brush pile needs the best we can provide. And I'm all for that, just like Marvin is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. What characteristics best distinguish you from Mr. Dement?
I tell everybody when they ask me questions like that Marvin is a great guy. He served on the council and he did a good job. We have pluses and minuses in our character and our personalities that do not need to be entered in conversation, except maybe personally. But my background is civil engineering and land surveying. My knowledge in the civil processes of a city, whether it be building, replacing, inspecting, bidding, estimating, have 40 years experience in that area. I feel like I bring something that Perry needs today to the table that it hasn't had in a long time, and that is an experienced engineer, an experienced surveyor in land developing, sales, descripting, runoff, those issues that face a city every day. That's what I bring to the table that is different. I'm not a financial wizard. I'm not the greatest engineer in the world, nor am I the greatest surveyor in the world, but I am a good administrator and manager. I know how to budget. I know how to plan. Yes, I even know how to dream. And I think Perry ought to reach for some pie in the sky every now and then to improve the quality of life here, take some risk, and build some things for people to enjoy. I feel like that my personality is that which people can work with, and I can work with because I want to. I want every day that I was employed, no matter where it was to be a good day, an enjoyable day. And I want the staff that work with the City of Perry, its consultants, and its citizens to think of it as a good day when they come in my presence, because I am on your side. I am focused on Perry's future, and I will be focused on that until I have to leave office. And then from that point, you'll have this old man coming around just bugging you about what's going on the sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dement, what characteristics best distinguish you from Mr. Johnson?
Well, when I first knew this question was going to get asked, I thought, well, this would be a really good opportunity to have us have a fist fight here in the middle of the room. But I wasn't going to go there. And right now it wouldn't matter, because since the sun's got down low, I can hear his voice over there, but I'm just blinded. It's just, there's a voice, but I can't see him. But anyway, no, and I've said this all along. I've never really felt like I was running against Gordon. I'm running on issues. I thought I'd point out, I would like to have full transparency in the city government. One of the things I'd like to do is put every one of the council board reports on the internet. Right now we put 3 to 5 page agenda that's fairly vanilla language. on what the council is going to discuss on any given meeting, there are sometimes 50 to 70 pages of documents that go along with that. It's public record. Why can't we put that out there on the internet as well, so all of the citizens know what's going on? They can see those financial numbers every single month, and they can make a decision for themselves, is the city in good shape or not. But that's not really the primary thing that separates me. I started off in my introduction of myself by talking about 17 years being involved in different community projects, community involvement. There's the Chamber of Commerce, there's Leadership Noble County, Relay for Life. Over that time, I promise you, no one really cares if their next mayor used to do a lot of stuff. If they've done things over a period of time. What they care about is what the next mayor is going to do for them from this point forward. In the 17 years, I've developed relationships with hundreds, if not thousands, of people between all those different organizations. And by doing that, I've had the opportunity to build a rapport with so many people that are comfortable coming to me and saying, here's the problems I see with what our city government's doing. They know that they can come to me, they can share their view on an issue, which may be the exact opposite of my view, but they know that I'm not going to criticize them for that, and I'm actually going to listen to what they said, because I realize that they, in fact, may be right, and I may be the one that's wrong. But having that many relationships, I think gives me the great opportunity to be a voice for the citizens of Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Dement. And if elected, sir, how will you as mayor work to make Perry a better place to live and work?
It's hard to, it's not hard to say with what I just finished saying is, and I even highlighted what I'd like to say on that, is listen to the citizens. They're telling us how they feel about everything on an ongoing basis. We just have to listen to them. And I honestly, when I started off on this campaign and went out, started meeting with different groups, I had gotten frustrated with some of the way I thought the council had acted a little premature on things, as was my opinion. And then last summer, when the city issued the $2,065,000 in bonds, that's what really got me off the couch and said, I'm gonna get involved in this. I can't complain unless I'm willing to do something about it. That being said, the process of talking to all of these folks has kind of changed. It hasn't changed my view on any of that. If anything, it's made me even more committed and more passionate about it. But what I found out are the citizens that I keep talking about are interested in us reinvesting in the infrastructure, taking care of their streets, taking care or fixing the sewers right now. This issue that I brought up earlier with permitting process, the inspections, there are a lot of people in this town who right now feel like the city government sees them as a revenue source and doesn't care about their feelings. I think we have to start listening to them, caring about their feelings, and they may be right, and chances are they probably are. We need to take some of their advice and let this council be their council again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dement. And Mr. Johnson, if elected, how will you as mayor work to make Perry a better place to live and work?
The secret to success is have a big ear and listen. I cannot speak enough to convince you to change things. I have to listen to you for the change that needs to come. I truly feel like the people I've visited on their front steps day after day have got their neighbor's best interests at heart, as well as the other people in the city. That's what we've got to do to reinvent Perry, to keep Perry moving forward, is involve everyone. I said before, I don't know all the answers. I don't know all the questions. But the citizens have their questions. They have some answers, and we need to take them into account. our city government right now is made up of some honest, hardworking people who have Perry's best interest at the core of their soul and heart. They will not do anything that they feel like truly hurts someone. Yes, we have a permitting system that needs to be revamped, and it will be. That's going to happen no matter who's elected mayor. I guarantee you. That's going to happen because the people are outraged about it. So we've got to do some things as a community, not as individuals with agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. In this particular matter, then, that exhausts the questions for the evening. And as you can see, both of the mayoral candidates are well versed, and we're indeed very well served in having these two gentlemen running. At this time, for a closing statement, I'll start with Mr. Johnson. You can have 5 minutes, and I bet they'll let you go over some because we have extra time. And please, during that, tell us your views and answer any questions that you've received while running, and what you want to accomplish as mayor.
Thank you. To all of you witnessing this debate, and it's an enjoyable thing to happen. I think it's important to happen no matter what the office. Marvin and I are both citizens of this community, been adopted by this community. I've been here since 1994. If my math's correct, that's almost 20 years plus. The examples I have in community leaders of the past have been people like Mr. Stringer, who was the division engineer out here. He was very involved in Perry, a great gentleman, someone I admire. Others have been some of the retirees from the employment I've had and neighbors that I've had. The 20 years I've been here, I've watched Perry stay at the same population level. And some said, that's the way we want it. We don't want Perry to grow. We don't want Perry to exceed in any way like that. Well, I want your children to remain here if they choose to, and they can't remain here if they choose to if there's not employment. We got to revamp our schools to keep them tougher on the kids to learn. We've got to draw in those needs we have as a community. I cannot walk from my house to the dollar store and stay on a sidewalk. Neither can any of you. That seems like a simple thing, a cheap thing, but it's not. It's something we need to do block by block to provide access to public and commercial entities for every citizen, whether they can run, walk, or they're in a chair, a wheelchair. That's our duty. We have an infrastructure that is suffering from neglect. It's financial neglect to some. It could have been money neglect in another way. We have cleared our debt on the pavements that we just did over the last few years, and like I said, we're in the black. The city has to have growth, and to do that, we as a council have taken some risk and bought land. And that land is sold at sometimes 5 and 6 times what we gave for it per acre. That money is going back into development. We are out there. The people looking for locations in this area know who we are. They know that there is a workforce here that is strong and willing to work. They know there's a community here that wants to have them here and to grow. Our biggest issue with that growth is there's no housing. I have friends that have transferred here in positions of responsibility that have to live in Stillwater because there's no housing. We need new homes. We need apartment complexes. We need duplexes. To do that, we've got to subdivide some land. We need recreational facilities for our kids. We need recreational facilities for our adults. We need them for the elderly, like me. We need them for people who can't get around without assistance. The schools are doing their thing for the kids by providing tracks and recreational stuff outside, which is brand new and neat. But we need something for the adults too. We need something for the people like me that are past 65. My dream is to help provide that. My dream is to improve the streets within our budget. And I want you to think of it, dream with it, plan it with me. That's all I'm asking. Let's get together, put our brains together, and work out the issues of Perry as citizens should, cooperatively. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Dement, will you please share with us your vision in regard to Perry?
Well, before I do that, I want to one more time thank Gordon, Dan, Tyson, and by the way, Tyson has been so nice as to promise he's going to burn a CD for Gordon and I. So I don't know what Gordon's going to use it for, but I promised one for my mother, and Mother's going to get one.
That's awesome.
And I really do appreciate y'all coming out here this evening. Hopefully all of you've got your DVRs going at home, recording what it was that was most important that you're missing this evening. Kind of review just real briefly on what I'd like to see the city of Perry do. I'm all for transparency, and when I say that, I want all information on the table before the council takes action on anything. I can talk a little bit about executive sessions that at times, and it's probably more often than I would like to see it happen, the council goes into executive session, rightfully so, comes out and takes action on a subject or on the subject matter that they discussed in executive session immediately. There's no time for the public to vet that issue. I would like to see any subject that was discussed in executive session not be voted on until the next meeting to give the public a little bit of knowledge, because it's no longer a confidential matter at that point. Once it comes out of executive session and action's being taken, it's now a public matter, and I think everyone should be in on that. Financial accountability. I want all the financial numbers out there available where they're easily accessible for everyone to go see, where they can see the numbers, they can make their own determination on whether the city's in good financial shape or not. I want to focus on core services. We can spend all the time we want to talking about real estate development along I-35 and the benefits, and there certainly are benefits to that. But we need to make sure that we stay focused on what we're here for. That's to provide the core services that the citizens can't reasonably provide for themselves. Again, water, sewer, electricity, streets, fire, police. We keep talking about growth, recruiting people to come to Perry. The first thing we have to do to recruit people to come to Perry is recruit our citizens to stay here. If we adequately recruit them to stay here, they'll recruit people to move here, and one way or another, we'll get those houses built. But right now, we've got to get the people wanting to stay here that are already here. And I just thought, at the risk of sounding like a politician, which I promised I would not become if I did this, I want to conclude this with a story, and it's true, so I can tell it. 18-year-old girl here in Perry she just recently turned 18, and she shared with me a few weeks ago that this was going to be her very first election that she was going to get to vote in, and that I should be excited because she was going to vote for me. And my first thought, it was, well, that's cool that I get to be the first person that girl votes for. I remember I voted for Ronald Reagan back in 1980 was the first election I got to vote in. That dates me, yeah, but and you only get that one first vote, and you remember it. At least I do. But then after I thought about it, and the coolness factor wore off, I suppose, I got to thinking that's a big responsibility she's given me, because she is willing to put me in a leadership role as one of the caretakers for the city that she wants to, when she gets out of college, come back to, raise a family, raise her kids, watch her grandkids be raised here. And she's trusting me to take care of it, at least one of the folks to take care of it. And I don't take that responsibility lightly. I can promise, if elected, I will take that responsibility seriously. And again, at the risk of sounding like a true politician here, I just wanted to conclude by saying I'd like to ask everyone to follow the lead of that 18-year-old wise young lady and vote for me, Marvin Dement, on April 1st for your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dement. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And members of the audience, thank you for your kind attention to the candidates. I had the honor of serving as your judge for some 23 years, and I got used to always trying to stay awake during closing statements. But these gentlemen, neither one of them mentioned that they were attorneys. They're not attorneys, and so they were not boring. They were good closing statements and opening statements. I'm very impressed, as I'm sure you are, with the quality of our candidates, and I thank them for their endeavor to serve others. Hopefully that is what I have done, and I see some people in the audience that is what they have done. That is really what it is all about. If we all help each other here in Perry, Perry can be extremely nice place to be. It has been in the past, it is today, but it won't continue to be if you don't work on it every day. And so with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much. Thank you.